Hi, I'm Tom Novotny, a professor emeritus of public health at San Diego State University, and it's very hard to follow that act. But let me just say a few things about our research in tobacco product waste that's been going on now for more than a decade. We've tried to identify this problem, of course, as a public health problem, where we need to look at upstream solutions, just as Laura has described. And to do that, we have to understand a lot of things about tobacco. We have to understand its burden on the society, and it's a substantial one. Here in California, we're spending $14 billion a year on healthcare costs due to tobacco product exposures to the population. And we're getting better at this. The state of California is now down to about 11%, 11.2% prevalence of smoking, which is better than any place in the country. What that means is that we've got a chance to reduce that even further, because the vast majority of people are not smokers, and we think that they'll understand the issues, not just on the health effects, but on the environmental effects now. So it's gratifying to see this linkage between public health and our concern for health effects of smoking and the environmental effects that are caused by the disposal of tobacco product waste. It's not just cigarette butts, but that's certainly the most common one. It's also the vaping products, the pods, the heat sticks. I really know how to knock over a camera and talk. And the packaging, it all becomes part of this waste problem. We have another problem here in California with tobacco product waste, and that is our storm drains, the stormwater. And I know this sounds a little bit nerdy, but the fact is that our Ocean Protection Council has indicated that by 2030, and legislation to follow it up called the Clean Water Act, the trash amendment, says that nothing more than 5 millimeters can go down in our storm drains. That means cigarette butts. It's very much targeted at that level of waste product. And that means that cities then become responsible to prevent that from happening. They can either put up full capture devices, which are expensive and may be maintained, or they can do something to prevent that waste from going into the storm drains. So that's where we become much more thoughtful about the public health approach. As Lori mentioned, upstream solutions are what we like to think about in public health. And there's a lot of them that can be made. And Dr. Campbell also mentioned some of those interventions. For instance, making the price of cigarettes higher to reduce consumption by adding a litter fee onto tobacco products sold in the local area. There are some communities that are considering a ban on the sale of filtered cigarettes, which is another way of trying to at least eliminate that non-functional quote filter, which is actually a fraud that has no health protection at all. And we need to make sure that people understand that by removing the filter, we're not increasing the risk for smoking. We're actually making it less palatable and less likely that kids will start and more likely that people will quit. But I think there are other efforts as well. One that we are pretty familiar with in California is banning restricting smoking in public places. This has worked beautifully in restaurants, bars, indoor air spaces to reduce exposure as well as the sort of health effects of secondhand smoke. Critics of these policies said that it wouldn't work, that businesses would be damaged by it, and what we found is that businesses improved, that people are much happier about it. None of us can expect to go into a restaurant and be exposed to secondhand smoke now. And so what we could do in San Diego, as well as other communities that have done this, is to restrict smoking in public places outdoors as well. That'll reduce secondhand smoke exposure, it'll reduce tobacco product waste, and it'll continue to denormalize smoking as we've been successful in doing here in California over the last 30 or 40 years. And let me just finalize is by saying, you know, as scientists, we like to count things. And in fact, the definition of an epidemiologist is a doctor who can count. And what we need to do is be able to evaluate the success of interventions. We need to be able to monitor the problem that we're trying to address, and that's what this project will be much more sophisticated at doing. We don't have enough data to be able to show, okay, here's what the extent of the problem is, where it's happening, who's doing it, what are the risk factors for it. But this project goes a long way in trying to shape our